This is Fish in the Boat's final run of the robot completing the entire mission for MoonBots. First, the robot is going around the lunar lander, avoiding damaging the artifacts. Then the robot is squaring up against the wall to make sure it is square with the ramp, and then turning and squaring up against the wall again to make sure we know exactly where we are. Then the robot goes up using bogey wheels to start going up the first ledge of the ramp, and then stops when it sees a longer distance with its two ultrasonic sensors in the front of the robot. As the robot goes across the high ridge, it takes a slight left turn, watching for a longer distance on the left ultrasonic sensor. When it sees that distance, it turns right. We go until we see a longer distance with both of the ultrasonic sensors. Then we know we have reached the end of the high ridge. Then the robot turns right and uses that same method for going down the ramp. Then the robot goes to hit the wall and squares up against that wall. Then squares up against the next wall and turns to wall track down the next wall and turns to make sure we know exactly where we are. There's a pattern here as to how we know exactly where we are. The walls are very useful in that. We go forward for a distance and then lower down a basket that has rubber bands stringed across the bottom. Those rubber bands can slip around the Zomerspheres, which here represent a few different things. Surface regolith being He3, oxygen, and water. It picks up those Zomerspheres and then continues on to pick up the second set of three Zomerspheres, lowering down the basket. As the basket lowers down, we wait for a second when we get almost there to make sure the basket stops shaking so it's more accurate. And then we're going towards the next one. We are lining up against a ramp again to make sure we know where we are, making sure our angles are correct. Going down, stopping for the basket to stop shaking, and then lowering the basket. We do a little shake and wiggle after that to make sure that all the balls get into the basket. Going for our fourth set of Zomerspheres, and we get the fourth set all of the way in. Next, the robot is going to go for the lunar sample. It is going down and squaring up against the wall, and then turning and squaring up against the next wall. We're then going to back up and use a hook on the right side of the basket to grab that lunar sample. There's a hook that only lets the ring of the lunar sample go in, but not come out. So it is just a mechanical issue where it grabs it and won't let go. Line up against the wall again to make sure we know exactly where we are. Every time that basket comes up, it hits a touch sensor on the top of the robot so we know where the basket is every time. Otherwise, throughout the challenge, the basket could be changing slightly every time it moved. The basket went down and hit the communication center solar array, and now it's going to hit the second part of the solar array to lower the second solar panel to power it. Second solar panel is deployed. We're going back and squaring up against the wall to make sure we know our angle, squaring up against the other wall. We're going to track the high ridge using the ultrasonic sensors again, using that same process we used when we went the opposite direction across the ridge. We see both distances with the ultrasonic sensors, going across doing a slight left turn until we see the long distance with the left ultrasonic sensor, and going until we see a long distance with the right ultrasonic sensor so we know we have reached the edge of the ridge. From here, we're going to dump the Zomerspheres into the hopper. There is a mechanism on the basket where when the basket tips, like it did when it got caught on the high ridge, it will lock it into position. Right now, it's very delicate that we keep the robot stable because when we lift up that basket farther, all the balls will fall out. Right there, all the balls fell out into the hopper of the sorter. The sorter then starts sorting the balls by color. There's a color sensor on that sorter and then an arm that moves the track of the balls into the different positions. One of those positions falls into a bucket that can be removed from the robot. The robot is on its way to grab that bucket now. Squaring up against the wall, turning, and again squaring up against the wall. Right here is going to lower its basket and grab the bucket that has the helium-3 in that bucket. It has 3 helium-3 Zomerspheres. We are now headed back to base with 320 out of 320 points. This is Fish in the Boat from MoonBots.